Good morning and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for making you wait. We had some technical issues, so thank you very much for your understanding in advance. Also, thank you for joining today's webinar on Sri Lankan startup ecosystem, which is organized for the Korean startups who wish to enter into the Sri Lankan market. Today's webinar is co-hosted by the four organizations, namely the Embassy of Sri Lanka to Korea, Export Development Board in Colombo, D.CAMP in Seoul, and UNIDO ITPO Korea. I'd like to deliver my sincere gratitude to the co-hosting organizations for your time and effort to organize this meaningful event. Also, I thank to the participating organizations in Sri Lanka, ICT Agency of Sri Lanka, Hatchworks, Pay Media, and Slascom for your excellent coordination and your time. For today's program, we will first invite the representatives of the hosting organizations for their respective remarks. Then, the four distinguished speakers from ICTA, Hatchworks, Pay Media, and Slascom will give us wide-ranging information about startup ecosystem in Sri Lanka. After the four presentations, we'll have time for Q&A sessions, so please feel free to type your questions in the chatting panel below so that we could ask the questions during the session. The Q&A session will be followed by the individual meetings between pre-registered Korean startups and Sri Lankan counterparts. So now I'd like to start by introducing His Excellency Dr. Saj Mendes, Ambassador of Sri Lanka to Republic of Korea, for his welcoming remarks. Please let me give you the floor, sir.
Good morning to Sri Lanka, and good afternoon to Republic of Korea. Excellency the Ambassador Santosh Jiangunjin, my good friend, Chief of UNIDO, ITPO, Mr. Hang Jung Cho, also my good friend and my colleague, and of course, Chairman of EDB, Mr. Suresh Timar, very friendly, very active colleague, Executive Director of D.CAMP, Mr. Kim Yong-duk, and other distinguished speakers. Let me have this opportunity to sincerely thank the co-organizers of today's webinar, the D.CAMP Korea, the Sri Lanka Export Development Board, the UNIDO ITPO office, and the Embassy of the Republic of Korea in Sri Lanka, as well as the Embassy of Republic of Korea in Sri Lanka, as well as this embassy. Let me also extend my wishes and congratulations to the ICT Agency of Sri Lanka, the Hatchworks, the Slascom, Sri Lanka Association of Software Services Companies, and Startup Sri Lanka program for jointly organizing this critically important and seminal webinar in order to promote and to advertise linkages between the startups of the Republic of Korea and Sri Lankan entrepreneurs. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the government of Sri Lanka, under the national framework known as Vistas of Prosperity and Splendor, of which he is the president, considers developing and supporting and nurturing and fostering the SME sector as one of the key economic and strategic pivots in elevating and advancing and augmenting the economy of Sri Lanka. SMEs contribute to Sri Lanka, just like in any other country, just like in the Republic of Korea or US or India or any of those countries, contribute 52% of the national GDP, gross domestic product, and account for about 45% of total employment of the country. The startups function as a seminal contributor of SME sectors in Sri Lanka. The reason why startups is absolutely essential in the economic activity and commercial activity, as well as technological activity of any nation, is because it possesses the potential of greater business activities, resulting in higher investment and income, which leads to better economic and higher expansion in the given country, including Sri Lanka. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, understanding the significance of startups and its relevance to the economy of Sri Lanka, the Sri Lankan government has initiated investments into the technology and IT sectors to improve communication and allow for businesses to take on international markets as well, to penetrate into international global markets. Creating the right ecosystem for startups has been considered a vital and pivotal in achieving this particular goal, economic goal. This trend is evident globally as well, where promoting local startups has become one of the key goals of policymakers and achieving sustainable economic growth. If you look around, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, almost every company, whether it's MNC, TNC, Chaebol, or any large corporate, had begun as an SME or as an MSME, micro, small, medium enterprise. Now, some of these companies, whether it's Samsung or Hyundai or LG or SK, and even some of the high-tech companies, Google, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, all these companies started either in garages or in dorms. And today, all these companies are $1 trillion companies or $2 trillion companies, like, for example, Apple and Amazon. So this is extremely important in uh, expanding an economy of a nation. Even Samsung, as a matter of fact, has market capitalization. Total Samsung Group has a market capitalization of $640 billion. That's almost twice the GDP of Singapore. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in this context, the Republic of Korea is now becoming a hotbed for startups. In fact, not just startups, but global businesses, such as the companies that I mentioned. This is mainly due to the support the central government, the Republic of Korea's government, and its supporting agencies have extended. Now there's a strong foreign entrepreneur culture in the Republic of Korea. With the advent of the fourth industrial revolution, the Republic of Korea is investing heavily on technological infrastructure and logistics, amongst others. I'm sure Chief of UNIDO ITPO, Mr. Choi, will be knowing it very well. Furthermore, they are creating a conducive environment for startups to foster and to thrive. Most of all, there has been an unparalleled financial injection by the Republic of Korea's government into startup development. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is important, it is very important to have programs like this webinar in order to share information, explore efficacious options, and, and for cooperation, and to learn from each other's experience and exposure. The embassy, on behalf of the Sri Lankan government, will do our very best to create these linkages at a time when the impact of COVID-19 pandemic has permeated through every aspect of social strata and aspect, creating various economic and social challenges and difficulties. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm certain that the scheduled presentations and addresses today by other experts could lucidly delineate and enunciate the startup ecosystem in Sri Lanka, thus mutually benefiting both the countries, as the moderator stated quite eloquently. Lastly but not the least, I earnestly urge and entreat the startups from both Sri Lanka and the Republic of Korea to work together to explore the avenues and options, to identify and to recognize the potential partnerships, linkages, programs, and action and courses of action to mutually benefit both the countries and both the peoples. And I understand, as Mr. Choi knows very well, and also Excellency Santush, the ambassador, knows very well now, Republic of Korea is the 10th largest economy in the world with a $1.6 trillion GDP. Just about 30 years ago, 40 years ago, it was just a mid-income nation. And Sri Lanka's stature today is where Republic of Korea was 30 years ago. Like what Republic of Korea in 1988-89, the time that Republic of Korea hosted the Olympics, that's the stage the Sri Lankan economy at this particular juncture. This is the time to capture the rise of Sri Lankan economy, whether it's startup, whether it's entrepreneur development, whether it's investment, whether it's tourism or whatever it is. Just like when equity market, stock market rises, that's the time just to seize the opportunity. While stating it, I thank all the speakers, of course, my good friend Mr. Choi and Mr. Excellency Santosh and Mr. Suresh Kumel and D.CAMP executive directors and all distinguished speakers. Very fruitful and productive and result-oriented discussions would follow up and ensue. Thank you very much and wish you all of you the very best. Thank you, sir. Thank you, gentlemen. very sad.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your detailed explanation and warm words. So next, the Ambassador of Korea to Sri Lanka, His Excellency Mr. Jung Un-jin, has already addressed for this event via a recorded video. So please welcome the video message of Ambassador Mr. Jung.
Mr. Kim Young-dok, Executive Director of D.CAMP, distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen, everyone, welcome. 안녕하십니까? I am the ambassador of the Republic of Korea to Sri Lanka, Santush Un-jin Jung. 안녕하십니까? 조현성 대사님, 우리 맨디스 진수 대사님, 우리 김영석 사장님, 그리고 멀리 계신 우리 한국 격인분들, 동희 대사입니다. 인사드립니다. It gives me a great pleasure to address you today in the Sri Lanka Startup Webinar 2021. I take this opportunity to express my sincere appreciation to all the organizers for making the effort to host this event, wonderful event, on a virtual platform amid COVID-19 pandemic. This startup webinar is very timely for young businessmen who are seeking opportunities to launch, collaborate, and invent to tailor to the modern world. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed the business environment totally, encouraging all sectors to embrace the digital transformation and adapt to the new normal. As ambassador to Sri Lanka, I have observed that Sri Lanka is rich in high quality, good quality human and natural resources, which are very complementary with the state-of-the-art technology and capital available in Korea. Also, the Sri Lankan economy has since become highly diversified. It has rapidly growing manufacturing and service sectors. Cutting-edge technologies have been used to modernize the agricultural sector. I can say that it is the right time for Sri Lanka to change and take a leap to a higher level. Korea is the very country that can help Sri Lanka reach the pinnacle of national development and prosperity. Since the establishment of the diplomatic relations in 1977, Korea and Sri Lanka have come a long way together to form a cordial bilateral partnership. Still, our relations have much more potential to grow. Korea was Sri Lanka's biggest foreign investor in 1980s and early 1990s. This webinar creates a platform for such collaborations to grow in a mutual beneficial manner, and I invite and request Korean investors to explore more opportunities in Sri Lanka, especially in the key sectors like FDIs, agriculture, renewable energy, infrastructure, digital economy, and so on. It is now the time for the youth in Sri Lanka and in Korea to lead the way for a digital economy. Strengthening economic cooperation is thus vital to unlock economic potential of Sri Lanka. I believe that investing in education and training is of utmost importance to build the skills necessary for thriving in the digital economy. Sri Lanka has the advantage of a youthful population. Around 31% of Sri Lanka's population is between the ages of 15 to 35, which presents an opportunity for Sri Lanka to maximize this demographic dividend. Korea can assist Sri Lanka develop the digital infrastructure by sharing the technical knowledge and capital in order to facilitate and promote startups in Sri Lanka. I hope that this webinar paved the way for further collaborations of joint ventures between our two countries. We are at a critical juncture in economic recovery and social development to face the common challenges posed by COVID-19. It is an opportune moment for Korea and Sri Lanka to deepen and widen exchanges, learn from each other's experiences. Working on these golden opportunities, I hope we work together to take our bilateral relations to a higher level. As ambassador of the Republic of Korea to Sri Lanka, I look forward to closely working with all of you to achieve our common goals. Let's stay strong together. Thank you. D.CAMP. 감사드립니다.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your time and effort. So now I'd like to invite Mr. Suresh Demel, the chairman of Export Development Board in Sri Lanka, for his opening remarks. Mr. Suresh Demel, floor is yours. Sir, could you please unmute yourself? Thank you.
Good morning to those in Korea, or good afternoon to those in Korea, and good morning, Sri Lanka. Your Excellency, Ambassador of the Republic of Korea to Sri Lanka, Your Excellency, Ambassador of Sri Lanka to the Republic of Korea, Embassy officials, especially Ms. Rekha Mallikarachi, Minister Counselor, representative from UNIDO Korea and D.CAMP Korea, representatives from Sri Lankan IT industry, and my dear colleagues. I'm glad to welcome you all for this second webinar after a very successful first session we had with D.CAMP Korea in February 2021. I'm glad to welcome you all for this second webinar and EDB as the apex government organization to promote exports is happy to extend our assistance for any collaborations between Sri Lanka and the Republic of Korea. Sri Lankan ICT DPM sector, which shows rapid growth over the past 2 decades, has diverted to more markets. At present, we seek more linkages and partnerships with Asian countries and emerging tech destinations. Today's session is more focusing on startups. We have eminent speaker panel from Sri Lanka who uplifted the Sri Lankan startup ecosystem. I hope you will receive in-depth information on Sri Lankan startups from our speakers from ICTA, SLASCOM, Hatchworks, and Sri Lanka, the Startup Sri Lanka platform. EDB is working closely with all of the above stakeholders for the development of Sri Lankan startups and attracting lots of global clients and investors. We hope this event will create more opportunities for the startup communities of this sector and will begin a long-term collaboration between our two countries. We wish you all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Suresh, for your warm words. Now I'd like to invite Mr. Jo Hyun-dong, the head of United Nations Industrial Development Organization, ITPO Korea, for his kind remarks. Please let me pass it over to Mr. Jo.
Good morning and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As head of UNIDO ITPO Korea, I sincerely welcome all participants to the Korea-Sri Lanka Startup Seminar today. Let me first of all express my sincerest gratitude to the ambassadors, Dr. Saji Mendes and Mr. Jung Hoon-jin, as well as Mr. Suresh Delmer, the chairman of EDB, and Mr. Kim Young-duk, executive director of D.CAMP, and other distinguished speakers from ICTA, Hatchworks, Pay Media, SLASCOM. After the most severe global recession in decade, the global economy is recovering faster than expected from COVID-19 pandemic. In Korea, we see gradual improvement in social and economic situation as the vaccination rate goes up. And in particular, the social distancing restrictions will be eased from next month accordingly. I hope and believe the situation in Sri Lanka will be improved as well in the very near future. In this time frame, we need to prepare for the upcoming economic rebound, and it is obvious that startups all around the world will play a significant role in post-pandemic era. It is therefore my great pleasure to host this webinar on the exciting Sri Lankan startup market and possible exchange between Sri Lankan and Korean startups. Especially even during the recent economic downturn, we could witness the great progress of ICT sector and its huge potential to play a leading role during the post-COVID times. Not only some global giant companies, but also many promising startups in the ICT sector have shown a remarkable performances for the past few years. In this connection, I look very much forward to getting to know more about the area the Sri Lankan and Korean ICT players could collaborate each other. UNIDO ITPO Korea promotes mutually beneficial business opportunities for SMEs and startups by utilizing our global network of field offices and ITPOs, as well as government organizations both in Korea and abroad. Our objective is to promote global inclusive and sustainable industrial development under the UNIDO's mandate through private sector engagement to nurture and expand the international partnership for technical cooperation and industrial development. Organizing today's event is one way of our intervention to achieve these goals. Through this introductory session to Sri Lanka startup business world, I strongly encourage all participants to pay greater attention to the valuable information provided to gain a better insight into startups in Sri Lanka. I believe startups will make a difference and change the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cho, for your comprehensive remarks. Next will be the remarks from Mr. Kim Young-duk, the Executive Director of the D.CAMP. After Mr. Kim's remarks, Mr. Choi at D.CAMP will continue to moderate the rest part of the webinar. So, Mr. Kim, the floor is yours.
Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. I am Young-duk Kim, the Executive Director of D.CAMP. I am sincerely grateful for your attending this event, Global Office Hour with Sri Lanka. I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to all of you. Today, we are here to learn Sri Lanka's startup ecosystem. I hope that this event will be a great opportunity for all attendees and especially for startups having the individual meeting after the webinar. For the last 8 years, D.CAMP has played a leading role in Korean startup ecosystem, supporting hundreds of startups by space and investment and network. Last year, D.CAMP opened a new center, Front One, the biggest startup incubating building in Korea. Here in Front One, we are trying to provide immersive support for startups with proactive partners such as UNIDO and Embassy of Sri Lanka. We look forward to connecting all promising startups and global partners to establish a meaningful relationship through D.CAMP. Please have a great time, and I hope you are staying healthy and safe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your remark, Mr. Kim. So good morning, Sri Lanka, and good afternoon, Korea. My name is Min from D.CAMP, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity to moderate this sharing session. So now we are having a sharing session, and first, I'd like to invite Mr. Sasindra Samarante from ICT Agency of Sri Lanka about overview the tech startup landscape in Sri Lanka.
Thank you, Min. First of all, it's a great pleasure to be presenting to excellencies of both countries and the distinguished guests on this webinar. And it's always an honor to be presenting the ecosystem of my country, which was built throughout many years with the collaboration of government and the private sector, which you would very clearly see in the next slide to come. It's been a decade of work, more than a decade of work in collaboration, starting off when the term startups were formed in Sri Lanka. And the government and proudly say has been having skin in the game from the beginning, hand in hand or hand in glove with the private sector to develop this ecosystem. And to this date, we have together supported incubators, supported the largest tech conference in the country. We've released reports together. We launched a data platform, which you will also get to know later. And we have celebrated together as an ecosystem all the wins of this country, including some of the wins of the startups which you'll get to hear in the next few minutes. As an agency, ICTA, sorry, as an agency, ICTA has been a facilitator, has been an implementer, and has put all efforts to be a catalyst of growth for this ecosystem. With that, we have forefronted relationships with the global networks such as the Genome, the Startup Genome are being placed. Sri Lanka is the Startup Genome Global Startup Ecosystem Report. We are valued for $117 million during the term of 2017 to 2019 first half. The next report is up. We also be noted to highlight the second global ecosystem for affordable talent in the world, according to the report, and also within the top 20 global ecosystems for bang for buck. We have also been noted for the funding growth, which is an index of 9, as you see on this slide. And we saw a 4x growth from 2016, the report which was conducted till the last report, a 4x growth during the 2.5 years of our ecosystem value. And this year we are projecting a much higher multiplier as well. To understand the startups in Sri Lanka, the Startup SL is the most ideal platform made together with government and private sector effort. You will get to know more of this from Kanishka later onwards. It's for 546 startups registered on the platform, ranging across different stages of their life cycle, ranging across different verticals, offering various services, with an ecosystem coming together on one single platform. Sri Lanka is also diverse in terms of the regional dispersion. Yes, Western province is predominantly where the numbers are, but we see new tier 2 destinations starting off in the northern province and the Uva province and the central province, which is being nurtured. We see exponential growth of startups being registered in the register of companies. That's the table that you see from 2016 to 2020. We see a growth which is more than 50%, and also the services offered even now predominantly though it's IT services. We are seeing this changing with more product companies coming out, specifically focusing on various verticals. The varied verticals could be seen on this particular infographic to highlight fintech, to highlight especially products like blockchain services, which recently got a seed funding round of 21 million rupees to the Lankan Angel Network. You'll hear about more companies through Kanishka as well, in the agri-tech space, in the space of digital media, which is up and coming. But one point to highlight is that we are also exploring on what our subsector strengths are, and then feeding it and supporting it through the various ecosystem partners like Hatch, who will be speaking next. The network of supporters are very strong in Sri Lanka. We are a close-knit community, as you see here. Relationships with every different entity, whether it's in Colombo, whether it's Jaffna, whether it's Uva or Masara, various parts of the country, they're all connected and working together. And that is what you see here on this particular slide done by ITC. Some elements of the Sri Lankan ecosystem to be highlighted. We have at least about 10 to 11 incubators running, about 10 co-working spaces, which one would present next. Different capacity development programs being run in the country right now. We're also connected to various international bodies. This might be the 8th presentation that I do for a particular ecosystem, and I'm glad that I was invited. Thank you. Been engaged quite a lot with the European Union, with the Sri Lanka Innovation Partnership Program, being connected to Techstars, and run around 20 startup weekends during the past 2 years. So the foreign connections being formed, including the investor networks, which is a point to note. A highlight of some of the work that ICTA has been doing with government. ICTA represents government and a vision to facilitate a startup-friendly government. And the first point of, I would say, win was called upon last month, where all procurements which are less than 2 million rupees of government for software was exclusively sourced from those who are listed in Startup Festival. That was a great win and great understanding of government. Also, the government has embarked on identifying the areas or the barriers that startups face in the country, identified 12 areas, such areas, and working with 14 organizations to become a startup-friendly nation, a startup-friendly government. Also engaged with Startup Genome recently with a report of acceleration coming out, identified 3 main areas that all of us are now focusing on in terms of our spending and effort and our time, growing our startups, increasing our quality, and increasing early stage funding. This is our vision in terms of broadening the funnel and taking everyone through the funnel, at least to have by 2024, 1,000 startups in our ecosystem, at least 700 earning revenue and 200 scale up, and from that, at least 10% who are above $5 million of annual or ARR is our vision. So finally, to bring about a startup nation, we're all collaborating, those who are on this call and many other entities, to ensure that our startups are globally recognized, that our ecosystem is globally connected, but most of all, that it's inclusive, creating a positive impact. And that's why we want to ensure startup and investor-friendly government with laws and policies and entrepreneurial education system. And that's what we are focusing for. Thank you for this time once again. And if you have any questions regarding the startup ecosystem development of ICTA and the nation, please do write to startups@icta.lk. Thank you once again to the organizer.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Now, I'd like to invite Mr. Jivan Dinam, the CEO of Hatchworks. He's going to share about Sri Lanka startups, subsectors, and ecosystem of Hatch.
Morning. Can you all hear me? Morning, distinguished guests. Good morning to Sri Lanka. Good afternoon to Korea. First of all, like to thank you for the opportunity to come and present here. I'll talk a bit about what Hatch is, a bit about some of the verticals that we focus on, as well as some of the verticals available in the startup ecosystem, and also some of the facilities that we have available in Sri Lanka today. So Hatch started 3 years ago, and as Sachin mentioned, it's a small ecosystem with the mind of creating a central space where startups can come and co-create new ideas, new technologies, and create something exciting for Sri Lanka. Throughout the 3-year journey, I think we were fortunate enough to be given the SOC Award for Best Co-working Space last year. However, we are more than just a space. What we try to do is we try to facilitate businesses to basically start and grow, and from ideation to kind of growth is what Hatch hopes to do. So just to give a recap of the last 3 years, why Hatch has been successful is we've been able to create an ecosystem within the 60,000 square feet space that we have in Fort, where we're able to provide not only space, but as mentioned, incubation accelerators, mentorship programs, community programs, events, as well as partnerships for the community at large. And the last 3 years, we have over 500 members and close to 78 startups within the Hatch ecosystem. I'll go into kind of some of the programs that we do to basically encourage kind of startups and growth going forward. first, I'd like to talk a bit about the space itself. It's a wonderfully created space which kind of encourages creativity and ideation. And this was intentionally designed just for startups, as we want startups to kind of live and breathe what they do. So many of the startups, this facilities is open 24/7 for people to kind of create things. So this is a 24/7 available facility for ideators, creators, innovators to come in and create new startups. We have a pretty expansive team of experts and residents focused on different verticals. For example, we have a Women in Entrepreneurship program, which is headed by Naomi Gunnels, who focuses, I think we've run now close to 6 programs in Women in Entrepreneurship. We have Florian, who focuses on maker, the maker space, and allowing makers to come in and create things using CNC routers, 3D printers, etc. But not to forget, we also have, and we also focus on the art side as well, where we get in artists to come in and create kind of this exciting place for artists and ideas from the arts as well to come and integrate into the space. So as I'm trying to explain, it's more than just science backed. We also look at artists and have them collaborate. I'll talk a bit about the Hatch Accelerator space as well, and the incubation space and the programs that we have. If you look at for the last 2.5 years, we've been running something called Kick-Ass, which is our Women in Entrepreneurship program, and we've had over 60 founders now go through these programs, and plenty of mentoring hours, and encouraging small to medium-sized businesses kind of grow out of here, and huge impact, especially during COVID and the April bombings. This community really held together and kind of were able to create businesses that sustained, through those difficult times. And, I just want to mention, this is one of our very successful programs. We also work with, parties in a Women in Entrepreneurship program. We work with, global partners. She Loves Tech is one such partner where we've been able to, for example, last year, in the first year, for the first time, we've been able to showcase a women entrepreneur, a woman entrepreneur from Sri Lanka on a global platform, which is great going forward. We have Hatch Open House, which is our mentorship program. We have over 60 mentors signed now, and they week in, week out, these are some of the top CEOs of local businesses that take the time to support the startups that come through and want to create new things. So the support is definitely there from the top leadership in the country as well as outside. So there are many diaspora as well that kind of get involved in the Hatch Open House program. And I think this is one of our very successful programs that have scaled. I'll talk about one of our programs that really showcased Sri Lanka's resiliency last year, where we were the only accelerator in South Asia to graduate a cohort of 7 fintech startups. And fintech is one of the regions that is actually growing in Sri Lanka. And last year, we had a very successful cohort of 7 fintech startups, and obviously the program itself was we had 50 plus advisory hours, lots of mentorship and program check-ins, etc. And I'll go a bit more into kind of the fintech ecosystem, if I may. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, you can see it.
Okay. So fintech is a growing space in Sri Lanka. We've done some ecosystem mapping of the close to 50 odd fintech-based startups in the country. So you can see it's quite diverse, from insurtech to banking tech services, to credit scoring, to crowdfunding, etc. And Sri Lanka is, by working with the regulator, which is the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, working with the FinTech Association of Sri Lanka, and working with the accelerators, we're trying to kind of get fintechs, out and about as well. And last year we took them through a very kind of detailed course where we went through everything from their financials, shareholder agreements, to pitch coaching, etc. And many hours spent on kind of going through the program and achieving their goals, and also the feedback from the startups as well as the other stakeholders was phenomenal, and the program was very successful. I also want to mention that this year we're starting our second location in Colombo, which is going to be focused on EdTech, and this is something in the pipeline that we're looking at as well, and we're doing this with a partner. The other thing that Hatch focuses on with corporates and working with corporates, we have corporates working inside the Hatch space as well. And what we do with these corporates is work with the startups and hand in hand kind of give the startups access to market. And one of these programs I'll mention was a purpose-driven open innovation program with Nestle, where they wanted to use kind of regional regional food in their food and beverage sector, and we were able to kind of shortlist across 200 applicants, and actually instead of giving one award, they were able to give two, which again was a hugely successful program doing purpose-driven open innovation in Sri Lanka. Another accelerator program I'd like to mention is the Good Life Accelerator, which is we work in partnership and kind of help them incubate, but now they're an independent organization within Hatch called Good Life Accelerator, which is focused on food tech and ag tech. And they have gone through now probably their fourth cohort where they focused on SMEs as well as startups. And we have had widely successful startups, for example, Sozo, who has probably grown 5 to 7x during their time in the program, and a lot more since then. So this year, as I mentioned, I just want to showcase that we have EdTech program coming out. This year, we plan to graduate our incubation program from just an incubator to an accelerator, as well as we are raising a fund for women in entrepreneurs, in entrepreneurship as well, to complete kind of the complete ecosystem going in. Quick mention of our Maker Studio as well, where we have CNC routers, 3D printers, everything that you need to kind of create actual prototypes for your startup instead of just software. We're trying to encourage makers as well in the country. We have various curated events within the space, within online, etc., where we get startups to collaborate with one another and also teach one another as well. And as well as, we have our own creative programs where there's knowledge sharing from experts as well to the startups. We've been very fortunate to have a global series where we've been able to reach out to, for example, the CEO of Vimeo, Brad Feld, who is the CEO of Techstars, etc., and have been able to have this global outreach where, again, we've been able to get these great kind of founders come and share their knowledge and work with Sri Lankan startups as well. We have global partners, local partners, all again, really, we can't fit them all in a page, but really successful. This is somewhat of an outdated thing of the team, as well as the founders. We also have a space in Jaffna in Colombo. We're looking at setting up in Kandy and Gaul in the future. And we have an up and coming space in Pakistan very soon as well, to take Sri Lankan startups to Pakistan, as well as a lot of Pakistan-based startups come to Sri Lanka, trying to provide that ecosystem to the South Asian region as to go into the region. Thank you.
For your presentation, okay, now I'd like to introduce Mr. Kanishka Viramunda, the CEO of Pay Media.
Hi, so good morning to my Sri Lankan friends, and also good afternoon to Korean friends. So it's a great pleasure to be here and basically speaking to you about Startup SL platform and what we have been doing during a couple of years, trying to build up the startup ecosystem of Sri Lanka. I would like to first, at the outset, thank EDB and D.CAMP Korea for organizing this event. So let me give you a bit of a background about the Sri Lankan startup ecosystem and the startup itself, the platform where we have partnered with the Ministry of Technology, and it's been completely managed and run by ICTA. So the need of the startup itself platform was basically to get all the startups connected and basically to share among the stakeholders, investors and mentors about the available opportunities, and also to help startups to grow. So we have a couple of objectives in terms of setting up the platform, to have a national level directory where we could list startups, and also a validation process to authenticate. As Mr. Sachindra mentioned earlier, it was a great win by the government to accept startups to bid for government projects under 2 million. So that opportunity was created through the validation process of this platform. And also we wanted to create a community across the startups for cross-selling, upselling through the platform, and also to have a common place where we could have all the events, competitions about startups, and also any news going on about the ecosystem. So this is our results after about 2 years of effort. So we have 546 startups registered in platform, and we have 21 ecosystem partners, and also we have verified entrepreneurs around 300. And we also have registered users as various investors, mentors, and other people as 2,500 plus. And within the startup ecosystem, we have collected, within these startups, we have about 8,600 employees working in the startup ecosystem. So the ideology behind the startup ecosystem is at one snapshot, you can get what is happening in the ecosystem. To facilitate ICTA, the government, as well as every other organization who is interested about startup ecosystem. So, as you know, we collected all the stakeholders, possible stakeholders in terms of the startup ecosystem, looking at media, government, funding agencies, crowdfunding, even freelancers and mentors, everybody in one platform. So this is what we basically create as a funnel. So we have spread the entire ecosystem into different stages. So when a startup registered with the platform, we have given them the opportunity to identify which stage they are in. So we create that funnel within the directory so that we know where, as a whole ecosystem, where we stand and what are the scale-ups or profitable startups or break-even level startups which are there, and align all the programs which is required to nurture these startups accordingly. So that's been done as a part of the platform. And then this platform also allows us to build certain partnerships with different regions. So this is one of the partnerships we have built with the European Union, with the Sri Lankan Innovation Partnership Program. where all the startups has a help desk where if they wanted to get connected to Europe, or if they are basically looking at setting up in Europe, there's a help desk which can give all the relevant information, as well as if there's a European startup who wants to come to Sri Lanka, we also provide this information which they require, and also they can also browse through the directory and pick up any startup that they want to partner. So these kind of partnership programs are also available through the Startup platform. So some of the startups which has been doing really successful, I've selected 3 startups. One is Sense Agro, which is a company which caters about 500 million small farmers. So they have created a platform where 500 million small farmers can collect on the platform on IoT, and also it has given in Sri Lanka about 150 rural farmers to become smart farmers. So this company is one of the companies which has gone beyond borders from Sri Lanka on the agri-tech area. And the second company is Arimac, which has started off with about 4 members at the initial stage, and today they employ about 150 creative engineers across multiple countries. So some of their work is for Emirates, Etihad, Visa, and also Coca-Cola. So they basically cater to all these international brands from Sri Lanka. And my last selection is Ensinga, one of the most successful exits which happened. I think they basically sold the entire company to a Singaporean-based company for $15 million. Now, Ensinga is an IoT enabler on real-time production monitoring platform for apparel industry. So that was a great success story which happened during, I think, last year, which created a lot of impact, as well as I think we were able to win the trust among other countries in Asia of investments to Sri Lanka. So with that, this is our ecosystem partners. So the ministry is basically the main stakeholder of this, and ICT is the custodian of Startup SL. And our plan is basically to partner with programs like Korea and other programs globally in terms of nurturing the startup ecosystem. And, thank you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Okay, then I would like to invite Mr. Ashik from SLASCOM.
Hi, good morning and good afternoon. Kanishka, do you mind stopping your screen sharing? Yes. Good morning to my Sri Lankan colleagues and good afternoon to all the distinguished guests who have joined from Korea. I am Ashik Ali, currently holding the Vice Chair position at SLASCOM. And it's my privilege today to speak about SLASCOM, the private sector industry chamber for services and product companies in Sri Lanka, and also about our Startup Sri Lanka initiative. Just a brief introduction. SLASCOM, as I said, is the industry chamber for services and product companies in Sri Lanka. It has a membership base of about 350 plus members right now, who are 90% predominantly exporters, and they employ close to about 85,000 people in the industry. How SLASCOM is structured is it has a board and a general council, which is made up of all industry volunteers, and it also has a corporate office staff with permanent staff to run all our programs. In terms of our shared vision with the country, it's to achieve $5 billion of exports by 2025 grow our workforce to 200,000 people, and also be a catalyst for the 1,000 startup program that we jointly collaborate with all the stakeholders on this call as well. If you look at key strategies, it focuses on some of the key areas. One is on the policy side, being the voice of the industry. We engage with all levels in government in order to make policies more conducive and enabling for the industry to grow. Then we have a large piece around marketing and demand generation. We have a Sri Lanka industry brand called the Island of Ingenuity, which you see on the positioning Sri Lanka. So this Island of Ingenuity branding focuses on the value proposition of Sri Lanka, and this caters to three different types of value propositions. One is where we attract global majors to set up their innovation R&D delivery centers in Sri Lanka as captive innovation centers. The second part is to support Sri Lankan companies, especially companies that create their own IP and have developed products and platforms to access global markets. And the third piece is around positioning Sri Lanka as a gateway to South Asia, and this includes inviting startups to set up in Sri Lanka to address the fast-growing and larger South Asian markets. Sri Lanka has a strategic geographical location to access all these markets. The third thing on this is the capacity and skills development. We work with schools, universities, tertiary education providers to increase the size of the talent available for the industry, the quality of that talent, and also to adapt new technologies, new emerging technologies into their curriculum. Around that, we also have launched what we call centers of excellence. These are to create key competency centers around AI, around cybersecurity, around intelligent automation, and also production platforms. Platform also hosts some key marquee events through its annual calendar. We have People Summit, which is focusing on HR and people practices. Then we have the AI Asia Summit, which is dedicated to AI developments in the country. We also have Quality Summit and RPA conference. I will elaborate on the Innovation Summit later on. We also publish reports and conduct surveys. We have employability surveys, industry hot skill surveys, compensation and benefit surveys, which keeps a track of salaries. We produce a Startup Sri Lanka report and also market intelligence reports on the target markets that we focus on. When you look at the Startup Sri Lanka Accelerator initiative, these are the key strategies. One is to foster and nurture startups and scale-ups to be successful in the international stage. That's one of our very key initiatives, and I will elaborate a little bit more on the Startup Exchange Program, which is one of the key drivers of that. The other is to strengthen and support the ecosystem for the startup to go through the entire life cycle, encourage more people to come into the entrepreneurial journey and startup, and also position Sri Lanka as a highly skilled, low-risk trial hub, especially for foreign startups to set up in Sri Lanka and access the South Asian markets. Objective, again, bring all the ecosystem partners together. This includes government, agencies, the facilitators, co-working space providers, community partners, learning and development partners, and investors. Recognize entrepreneurs and innovators at regional level, and develop. We have a very focused program around women technopreneurs, and very specific initiatives around that to encourage women-led startups. We connect with mentors around other ecosystems as well as our own mentoring channels, networking opportunities, funding and market entry opportunities, and also look at what are obstacles, policy-related matters that we need to intervene to make startups more successful. From the industry side as well, there is a platform which is very much aligned to what Startup SL also aims to do. We have more supplementary information, bring about all the ecosystem partners, showcase some of the startup success stories, and also act as a point of contact. Some of the past initiatives that we have completed recently, we work with the Oslo Innovation Week year on year, and we support startups to go there, startups to pitch, and enter into competitions. We have a Startup Sri Lanka Showcase series, which basically we provide the platform for startups in Sri Lanka to address the larger membership base of NASSCOM. We have innovation team meetups. Currently, these are in virtual mode, but pre-COVID and post-COVID lockdowns, we have networking events and knowledge sharing sessions for exchange of ideas and opportunities. And we also run collaborate and run competitions, events, and publications. We have a startup accelerator collaboration with X-Hub Tokyo, IIT Cutting Edge's local competition with one of the universities. We work with the IEEE. As I said, we also publish startup survey and a report around that. The Ingenuity Award is a flagship event held annually, open to schools all the way to enterprises with different award categories. We run this around the entire Sri Lanka, all 9 provinces, and this year saw some very good entrants and winners from all over the country. And this is essentially a big platform for startups to be recognized at the national and international level. Now, let me go into the specific startup exchange program that we have conceptualized. We are in discussion with D.CAMP as to how to have this, formalize this so that it can happen between Korean startups and Sri Lankan startups. So the objective is for Sri Lankan startups to explore foreign markets and foreign startups to explore Sri Lankan market as well as expanding the South Asia region. And also to share lessons learned through this exchange program to the wider community so that startups can improve their product market fit and also collaborate with foreign partners in complementary solutions. And also to provide a support network for market entry as well as to build a sustainable economic model for them. Typically, we envisage this to be a 6 to 8 weeks assignment program. We have run certain components of this with our partner in Norway around the Oslo Innovation Week, where we fund Sri Lankan startups to go there for 3 weeks around this festival and interact with Norwegian startups and learn from that experience. Similarly, we invite Norwegian startups to come to Sri Lanka as well. Unfortunately, through 2019 all the way to now, because of COVID situation, this has not been feasible, but eventually we will look at how to enable this, and also if a virtual exchange program is also possible. We also have reached out, and last year we worked on an invert program with Exab Tokyo. 3 Sri Lankan companies got selected on that invert program. This year we are in discussion with both invert and an outward program where Japanese startups. And as I said, we are in discussion with we're targeting about 3 to 5 startups, and it could be around verticals or specific technology areas where the focus could be. In terms of program support, this is more applicable to Sri Lankan startups. We are looking at how to, some of these startups have great ideas, etc., but they sometimes have difficulty getting their applications, a successful application through. So right from the beginning, we are putting in a program to provide application assistance, be on the local selection side, help them do their pitch preparation for their pitch to the international partners. Any language translation support necessary if they are in a market where English is not a predominant language. Preparatory coaching, mentorships, etc., to get maximum benefit out of the exchange program. We have some lessons learned from previous startups who have taken part in this. Some level of funding support, and more importantly on the post-visit evaluation and lessons learned, so that the wider community can benefit out of that experience. So on the invert, which is more relevant to Korean startups in this program, we would like to be involved in the selection of those foreign startups, so that we can see what their ambitions for Sri Lanka and the South Asian markets are, whether it's aligned, whether those areas Sri Lanka also has some level of support to contribute. Looking at providing them with co-working space, pair program with Sri Lankan startups, so that they can find one-on-one interaction. Business support workshops, so that if they choose to incorporate, look at the tax, investment sides, etc. Knowledge exchange tour, we have the certain regional startup hubs, Sachin mentioned some of them, to appreciate the wider ecosystem. And lastly, the evaluation and lessons learned workshop. This basically is what we have envisaged. In discussion with D.CAMP, we will fine-tune this program and see how fast we can launch it. I'll take question and answers during the Q&A session. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you all for your sharing session. Now we are going to have a Q&A session with EDB. So if you have any questions about Sri Lanka or anything, please leave any questions in the Q&A chat below. So actually, some participants already sent questions earlier, so let me share now. So here is our first question. I wonder if is there any opportunity to expand business to Sri Lanka, especially during this COVID-19? Sri Lanka I think this, yeah. So Sri Lanka government's response and support for the foreign startups during COVID-19. Did you answer the first question?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Sri Lankan government has given a wide range of opportunities for SMEs and startups, from financial support to encouragement more than anything. And we will be, the EDB is also looking for opportunities to support this sector. So we are working closely with SLASCOM and other agencies on what we will identify the requirements and then be able to support this. And we currently have a new minister who is a parliament minister who is assigned to entrepreneurship and startups. So we are encouraged by that support that the government from a political angle is going to give us. And we are looking forward to working with the new minister to align our requirements with the government.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your answer. Let me share the second question. I think this question is from startups in education field. So I wonder the level of interest, access, and equipment of schools. So can students use computer or tablet without any challenges? If there are, what are the most representative issues?
Shall I think Sri Lanka actually has a very high literacy rate, so using computers is not necessarily a problem. Sometimes it's access to technologies that could be a problem, at especially remote schools, but predominantly I would say 80% of the schools, computer literacy is not really a huge concern. Maybe Sachin, do you want to add to that?
Sure. So in terms of the technology usage in education space, there is a very strong roadmap that has been formed for the country under the education reforms. And especially in terms of digital literacy of citizens, the target to be achieved is 75% to be digital literate by 2024. And alongside that, there is a national platform called Itaksala, which is being rolled out to onboard all the students in the country onto the space. Even right now, there are certain schools which are running on remote platforms in terms of the education, and yes, the difficulties are being faced by in terms of access, but not in terms of skill. It's only in terms of access, which the Telecommunication Regulatory Commission has pledged to provide broadband for all across the country and rolling out a program across the country. With this space, there is much potential for education platforms. And even right now, we see a growth of education platforms in our ecosystems, even especially our incubator program has more than 40% applications from edutech sector. And those who are selected, a similar percentage is from the edutech sector, even last round during last year. So we see a significant growth, which also means that they're existing, they're growing, which is space is available, you just need to carve out your niche. Are you working on MCQ questions? Are you working on a platform for teachers? So you have to carve out your niche in this in the sector, but it's open.
As just to add to that on the opportunity side, we are going to have an EdTech program, and we see a lot of interesting new startups coming about focused on the EdTech space, primarily because the government is being very open with the education space and saying, okay, we need to change it. We need disruption here. So it makes it very interesting for startups to be involved in that space. And I think if there is a value proposition that can come from a Korean startup, that would be also quite interesting.
If I may add to the earlier question which Suresh answered, if there is a startup who wants to get into the space in Sri Lanka, what we seen successfully work are partnerships. Because of in any country, a local context is always beneficial, and also in terms of registering your businesses, in terms of understanding the space, a partnership would work, and hopefully through this endeavor with D.CAMP and the embassy, we could see like-minded edtech startups in Korea and Sri Lanka forming partnerships. And I would predominantly encourage that as the way to go forward, while saying that 100% ownership of foreign ownership is also allowed in Sri Lanka, which is not a problem. But what has really worked out are partnerships between startups, between the tech startups.
Okay, thank you for your answer. Unfortunately, we run out of time, so I think it must be our last question today. So the last question is, I heard it, the IT outsourcing is on the rise in Sri Lanka. So is there any specific supporting program or policy about IT outsourcing?
I think we might take that a bit and then.
If I were to understand the question, I mean, Sri Lanka is emerging as a key outsourcing destination. So yes, more and more companies are looking at Sri Lanka and setting up their, as I told you, the innovation centers, their delivery centers here. It's both in the tech space as well as the BPM space. So outsourcing as an industry is growing, and last year we exported close to about $1.5 billion worth of exports, of which we estimate more than 60% would come from services as outsourcing. So and the 5 billion target will also be a very large portion of services income as well. So yes, it's a destination which is focused on attracting foreign companies to set up their development centers, their delivery centers in Sri Lanka. And there's a lot of policy-related interventions, skills and capacity-related interventions, along with government and industry and academia, to make sure that the right talent and the policies are available for foreign companies to set up or even outsource their requirements here to a service provider in Sri Lanka.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your answer. And let me share the last question. I'm curious about the usage of smartphones, as you have mentioned, the goal for increase of digital literacy. I wonder what the percentage is now in the startup school. Could you and you can also check this question on the Q&A chat.
The question on smartphone usage in the country, I think.
Yeah.
Right? So smartphone penetration, especially due to devices, low-cost devices coming in, and with the introduction of Android, of course, is around 50% or a bit more now. And therefore, even the feature phone usage, if you take in Sri Lanka, we have 120% of mobile penetration in the country. And that includes smartphones and feature phones as well, which means that people have multiple SIM cards per person. So with that 50% of smartphone users ranging from various features of Android, and if you're looking at the market space, but in the education space and even the fintech domain, the application rollouts have majority been for Android, which is the market owner or share, the majority share in Sri Lanka, with I would say iOS coming in second. Anyone else want to add?
Yeah.
If I may add, and there's a lot of proliferation of locally developed apps as well for both local businesses as well as foreign businesses or services. So that whole marketplace and apps development for both Android and iOS also is very vibrant.
Okay, thank you for your answer. So now it's time to end up today's webinar. So if you have any more questions about Sri Lanka or anything, please don't hesitate to contact us, D.CAMP or UNIDO and all presenters you made today. So now we are moving to other Zoom for startups individual meeting. To whom joined the individual meeting, please move to another link I sent you before and on the chat on your right side. And all participants, thank you for participating in today's webinar again. And I'm looking forward to having a good starting point through this webinar. Okay, so let's call it a day. Thank you. Thank you today.
Maybe we can take a picture of the participants.
I'm sorry?
Maybe we take a picture of the participants with the video on.
Okay. That's a good idea. So, okay, so please, let me do a screenshot. Okay, hold on, please. Okay, great.
Okay. Cheese. Okay, we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.